Good morning. Good morning, and welcome to Sunday School. I am your teacher this morning, Alonzo Richard Fleming, and I want to welcome you to Sunday School. Let's see, get my flux capacitor fluxing, get all my gadgets working properly. I want to thank everybody that's joining us this morning. I see you, Patricia. I see you, Cecil Ann, and a few others that are in the room this morning. Thank you for joining us for Sunday School. We have a lesson for you this morning to start off the new year. And I got y'all this week. I got you. I put up a post about our lesson this morning. And I guess it took some of you aback. But these words are all in the Bible. So I'm just using them. And you never saw somebody use them, I suppose, like this. But anyway, I want to welcome you. And I want to get right into the lesson this morning. And let's see. Make sure everything is going properly. Let's see here. Yeah. Flux capacitor is fluxing. And I'm all ready to go this morning. So our lesson this morning is coming out of the book of Luke in the Bible. And it's a familiar story about the prodigal son. And those of us who have been in church all our life, and I'm pretty sure that's about 90% of our audience, who have at one time or another heard this story about this wayward boy who left his father's house. And we're going to use this story to illustrate some points this morning that I think is going to help you to understand not only yourself, but the environment that you happen to be in, why you chose to be in that environment. And I know some of you think that you did not choose it, that you were a victim of circumstance. But this story is going to illuminate your power that you have as a result of being a son of God. So the first thing we're going to do, we're going to read the verses, and I'm going to read the whole story so you can get the gist of what's really being said, and you can grab hold to that which is in you and use it towards your own benefit and towards your own self-development, as well as your closeness to your Father, the Creator, God. So, starting off with verse 1 of this story is found in Luke chapter 15, and I'm going to read it. Then drew near unto him all the publicans. By the way, I read out of the King James Version, so because it was the version that captured all of the secrets before the wise and the prudent were able to find out about the secrets and write them out through some of the other versions. Now, the King James Version has written out some too, but the bulk of the secrets that have been hidden from the wise and the prudent and revealed unto babes are found in the King James Version of the Bible, and that's the reason I read out of the King James Version with its old English syntax. Then drew nigh unto him the publicans and sinners for to hear him, talking about Jesus. These publicans and sinners came to him. And the Pharisees and scribes murmured, saying, This man receives sinners and eats with them. And he spoke this parable unto them, saying, What man of you, having 100 sheep, if he lose one of them, does not leave the 99 in the wilderness and go after that which is lost until he find it? And when he had found it, he laid on his shoulders, rejoicing. And when he comes home, he calls together his friends and his neighbors, saying unto them, Rejoice with me, for I have found my sheep which was lost. I say unto you that likewise joy shall be in heaven over one sinner that repents more than over 99 just persons who need no repentance. Either what woman having 10 pieces of silver, if she lose one piece, does not light a candle and sweep the house and seek diligently until she find it? And when she has found it, she calls to her friends and her neighbors together, saying, Rejoice with me, for I have the peace which I have lost. Likewise, I say unto you, there is joy in the presence of the angels of God over one sinner that repents. And then he said, a certain man had two sons. I want to make sure that I give you this right now, this man, before I continue reading. Verse 11, he said, a certain man had two sons. Now, you would think that he's talking about an individual, but he's talking about the state of mind of a particular man, a certain man. He was certain. So a certain man had two sons. The younger of them said to his father, Father, give me the portion of good that follows to me. And he divided unto them his living. And not many days after, the younger son gathered all together and took his journey into a far country, and there wasted his substance with riotous living. And when he had spent all, there arose a mighty famine in that land, and he began to be in want. And he went and joined himself to a citizen of that country, and he sent him into the fields to feed swine. And he would fain, having filled his belly with the husks that the swine did eat. And no man gave unto him. And when he came to himself, he said, how many hired servants of my father have bread enough to spare, and I perish with hunger? I will arise and go to my father's house, and I will say to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and before thee, and no more worthy to be called thy son. Make me as one of thy hired servants. And he arose and he came to his father. But when he was yet a great way off, his father saw him and had compassion and ran and fell on his neck and kissed him. And the son said unto him, Father, I have sinned and in thy sight, and I am no more worthy to be called thy son. But, verse 22, the father said to his servants, bring forth the best robe and put it on him, and put a ring on him and shoes on his feet. And bring here the fatted calf and kill it, and let us eat and be merry. For this my son was dead and is alive again, and he was lost and is found. And they began to be merry. Now his elder son was in the field, and he came and drew nigh to the house, and he heard music and dancing. And he called one of the servants and asked what these things meant. And he said unto him, thy brother is come, and thy father has killed the fatted calf, because he has received him safe and sound. And he was angry and would not go in. Therefore came his father out to him and entreated him. And he answered and said to his father, look at here, these many years I've been serving you. I haven't transgressed. I haven't done anything to disobey you. At any time, I had all your commandments. I paraphrase that because I love that part. And yet you never gave me a kid that I might make merry with my friends. But as soon as thy son was come, which has devoured thy living with harlots, in the ghetto vernacular, he blew all his money with hoes, and that thou killed for him the fatted calf, and said unto him, Son, thou art ever with me, and all that I have is thine. And it was good that we should make merry and be glad, for this your brother was dead and is alive again, and was lost and is found. Now, I want to go back to the top of that story again and highlight it before we get into the subject this morning. I pointed out to you that first of all, in the first verse, that it was the publicans and the sinners came close to Jesus to hear what Jesus had to say. These publicans and sinners this was all in plain sight. And the Pharisees and scribes murmured, saying, "This man is hanging out with sinners and he's eating with them." Now, this designation of a sinner was the designation that the Pharisees and the scribes, the preachers of Jesus' day, designated those who was not following them, who was not paying attention to them, who was not listening to what they had to say about this, that, and the other. They labeled them sinners. And the publicans were tax collectors and those types that was coming to listen to Jesus, and they were the scourge, according to the Pharisees or the ministers, in the midst of the people who didn't like Jesus because of Jesus freed them from their doctrines. One thing you want to keep in mind about this, and this is a very important point to understand, is that the Pharisees and the preachers and the ministers of Jesus' day relied on the book in order to justify how they designated people. They read the book. If you remember, when they brought this woman who they found, went out looking for, and found her and brought her to the temple for the purpose of killing her and Jesus, they quoted scripture to Jesus and said, "Look at here, in the book of Leviticus, Jesus chapter 13, verse 2, it says this, that, and the other, that this woman needs to be killed. What do you say?" They were the ones designating with the doctrine this guilt upon the people because of what the people was doing and not following what they were saying. This is an important point to understand as we go on in this story. So because they were murmuring and complaining and belly aching because Jesus was freeing the people from the chains of their doctrine, Jesus began to tell parables, or using the ancient African principle of correspondence to help them to understand how God sees people and how God sees not only people, but these people. It is God who is calling the sinner the Son of God. It is God who is calling the publican and the Negroes and the sellouts and the coons the Son of God. It is God calling them the Son of God. In order for Jesus to use this point of correspondence to help them to understand, he showed this in parables. And as the book prophesied, he would speak in parables so that it would be hidden from the wise and the prudent and revealed unto babes, those who humbled themselves under the definition that God had for them, and not the definition that they had for themselves or the definition that some preacher put on them. So he goes into these stories, and we're going to center on the story of the prodigal son. And I pointed out to you earlier that this man, it starts off saying a certain man. And if you ain't careful, you will miss what that means when he talks about a certain man. You would think he's talking about Joe Blow over here. No, he's talking about the mentality and the state of mind of the individual father. The father was certain. He was certain about what? Certain about his own identity and certain about what he produced. So this certainty is not the designation of a body, it's the designation of a mind of an individual. Jesus said in another place that the words that he speaks are spirit and their life. that the flesh profits nothing, in meaning that the physical does not understand it. You can't understand what he's talking about if you deal with it in terms of the physical makeup of a body. He's talking about the mind and the spirit. So this certain man was talking about the mind that this individual had in himself. A certain man. And so it goes on, and you will notice here that the boy decided, for whatever reason, that he wanted to take his inheritance, and leave home. Now, this father did not make any bones about it. He gave him all that falls to him. And so he decided that he wanted to take his journey, and this journey was to a far away land. Now, let me talk about it in the sense of the title of the lesson. The lesson is, who in the hell do you think you are? The prodigal son comes home. Who in the hell do you think you are? Now, I put that word the definite article, in front of hell to designate a place. And again, this place that I'm talking about, this hell, is a certain place. The hell do you think you are? In my father's house as growing up, as a young man, my father had certain designations for us when we did wrong. And there were certain levels of punishment in the house when we did something wrong. For minor infractions, he would just tell us to stay in the house. You would have to stay in the house. And as a kid, I remember this always happened during the summer. And the minor infractions, we would have to just stay in the house on this beautiful summer day while the other kids are riding bikes and making bikes and picking pears and this, that, and the other, whatever we were doing. For minor infractions, you may have to stay in the house for a day. And then for more severe infractions, he would not only make us stay in the house, but in our bedroom or in the dormitory, which he had in our home, which he had converted the upstairs into a dorm, from bedrooms into a dorm, because there were 4 boys. And so the boys slept up in the dorm upstairs. And it was a hot place up there in the summertime. We didn't have any air conditioning, so you did not want to be up in the dorm. Sometimes he would make us stay up there for a week for more grievous things. And I remember many times my father, he would sometimes be in doubt as to who he was dealing with. He would say on minor infractions, I don't know who you think you are. Or major infractions, he would say, I don't know who in the hell you think you are. Y'all know what I'm talking about. Don't be acting like y'all grew up in a monastery. My father said, I don't know who in the hell you think you are. Because some of the things that we were doing were so grievous that he was trying to teach us, you are Fleming and you are strong. And so when you're doing things that's outside the nature and character of the Fleming, then he was in doubt about the identity that we had. So he would say, I don't know in the hell you think you are, and then he would measure out the punishment. So he was not a certain man, because my behavior was able to bring doubt about himself. And he was bringing doubt about himself because he would explain, I don't know who you think you are. You see that? So he would be bringing doubt about himself because I came from him. So our little parable breaks down at that point, and you will see that God does not have an uncertainty about himself. as did my father. So one thing about this was that we're in hell up in that hot dormitory for 5 to 7 days, and we're in hell trying to figure out who we are so we can explain to our father who we thought we was. So now, as I said, the parable breaks down a bit, but you can get the main point of it because this God that I'm talking about is a certain God. He is certain about himself. So going back to this story, this young man decides to take this journey. And his father lets him go. We don't know why he decided to leave, but we can deduce that some small thought in his mind caused him to want to leave his father's house. And his father did not make a big deal about it. He let him go. He gave to him all the resources that falls to him and allowed his son to leave without any problem, complaint, without any kind of say you shouldn't do this, that, the other. He allowed his son to go. And I want you to see this analogy that, listen, while he was in his father's house, it was analogous to looking at light. But when he decided to leave his father's house, the light was behind him. The light of his father was behind him as he took this journey to this faraway land. And when light is behind you, depending on the angle that the light happens to be in, you see yourself as a shadow. If you're walking and the sun is behind you, you will notice a big shadow of yourself in front of you. And this shadow appears to be doing everything you do, but you see yourself in terms of shadow. So as this young man took hold to this thought and was walking away from his father's house, he began to see himself as in terms of shadows. He didn't see his real power. The further he got from his house, the more the understanding of his power diminished. Because depending on the angle that the sun or the light is behind you, the further away you get from the light, the smaller and smaller and smaller your shadow gets. And since you are seeing yourself in terms of shadows, the smaller and smaller and smaller you get in your own eyes. So this boy is going away from home. And so as his shadow gets smaller and as his mentality and his thinking of himself gets smaller, he's going through a process of self-definition. He's defining his own self in terms of what he sees in the shadow. He's no longer able to see himself as his father created him, but he sees himself smaller and smaller and smaller as he goes towards this strange land and goes through this process of forgetting himself. You want to understand, ladies and gentlemen, that this boy is taking this trip by choice. It may seem that something guided him away, but he chose to take this trip, and each step of the way, he chose to take that step in that direction. Now, another thing I want to bring out about this journey as he's going on this journey, and as he's seeing himself smaller and smaller, and thereby forgetting who he is, I want you to understand that the voice of his father was still in his head at all times. And I want to put this question to you here and now and ask you to answer this question in your mind. At any time as he was taking this journey, did this boy stop becoming or being the son of his father. When he walked away, taking the first step, did that take away his sonship? As he got a mile away from his father's house, did it take away from his sonship, from his identity as a son? While he made it to the strange land, and in the strange land, and getting with the house, was he still a son of that father or not? Answer the question. Was he still a son while he was riotously living? Was he still a son while he was blowing his money? Was he still a son when he was laying with the whores and the prostitutes and drinking and carrying on? At any time did he stop becoming a son of that father? This is a very important question, because if you are studying A Course in Miracles with me, you will notice that the Course never takes from you your identity, because it is so busy reminding you who you are that it has no time to take away from your identity. So this boy, while he was in this strange land, was still the son of this father. Even though he was conducting himself in such a way, he still was the son of this certain man. Let's continue. So he's in this strange land now, and he's among a strange people, a people that seem to not be concerned about the things that he's concerned with that was in his house. He knew that there was something about this people that he was among that was different from him, but he was living it up because he had plenty of cash, and he was doing what he was doing. But he's out here in this land and among a people and a mind that was validating something completely different and alien to his own nature. And he dealt with it, and he stayed in that land. Well, when he blew his money, he got an eye-opener. The eye-opener was there all along, but he got this eye-opener because he didn't have any more loot with him. And so he began to have to understand that this people is not like him. This mind that he's in this land is not like him. There's something strange about this people. And he knows that he can get what he wants. So he asked somebody, and the Bible said, no man in that land gave to him. They didn't help him at all. But one particular man said, well, look, you can go feed the pigs. So he would take the pig slop, and he would eat some of the slop on the way to feeding the pigs. That's what it means when it says he would feign to eat the husk that the pigs did eat. He was eating it on the way, taking it to the pigs. And I can imagine old Porky over there. Look at here, homeboy, that's my slop. Why you eating my slop? Get your own slop. No man gave to him, not even the pig. So he's now in the pig pen, and he's enjoying a good slop meal with the pigs. And while he's there, there was an awakening. He's there eating, and he's starting to hear the voice of his father, which had never left him. See, the voice of his father was with him. The light of his father was with him. The light of his father is in every man that cometh into the world. Do you see the parallel here? John 1, do you see it? How it fits in when it says he was in the world? And every man that cometh into this world, this light is in him. Even if you leave home, your home, this boy is in this pig pen, but this light of his father was still there in him. And as he sat there, he started going through this process of remembering. Now, the word remember is a strange word. And we said, oh, I remember. But have you ever thought what the word remember means? I told you, if you've ever listened to me before, you've heard me say that anytime you see the prefix re on a word, it has a time designation to it. It means go back to some original point. Refund means that you had some money in your pocket, you gave it to them, and when they gave you a refund, they gave you all the money that you had before. Renew, you were once new and you became new again. You see that? So when you see re on the front of a word, it means it has a time designation. And Clarissa Edie, she wrote it. She's in the class here this morning. She wrote a essay one time, and I want to thank her for that. We were in the 4th grade together, and I stole her essay, wrote my name on her essay and her name on my essay, and turned them both in. And the teacher said, Alonzo, good work. She was surprised because I'd never done anything. I didn't do anything. I just came to class because I had to come to class. But she had such beautiful handwriting. And I remember as the teacher is giving me compliments and looking at Clarissa Edie, and she was looking over at me, and boy, if she could throw knives, I'd have been a dead man. Because she knew that I stole her paper. But I'm saying it was the reading of that paper and the elegance of it, and me studying that paper while I had it in my hand to see the beauty that was in my own soul if I put an effort to it. She don't know this until later on in life I confessed to her, yeah, I stole your paper, but she already. This boy began to remember himself. In other words, his thinking was all fragmented. It was everywhere. It was in pieces, and he couldn't put the pieces back together. But he began to remember the environment of his home and realized that in his father's house, that his father had the ability to put all the pieces back together that were fragmented. Remember, making all the pieces become one member. They're a member of the same mind. Remember, they're consistent with that mind that was planted in you from the beginning. Remember, you're getting your thoughts that God planted. You can see this in the story of the field of wheat and the tares that Jesus told. A man planted a field, and he planted wheat in the field. And in this field, there was nothing but the wheat. And somebody put the watchers to sleep, and an enemy came in and planted tares. And when the watchers woke up, they noticed the tares, but they couldn't quite tell the difference between the wheat and the tares because they looked so close together. Now, I know the preacher's telling you that's people, and that's a story of the rapture. But if that's a story of the rapture, then the wicked going to be raptured first. But this has nothing to do with your body. It has everything to do with your mind. And the mind that you have is the field that God planted. And the wheat is representative of the thoughts that God put in your mind. They're still there, but you were put to sleep, and an enemy came and planted new thoughts in your mind, and you've been trying to use them thoughts to function in life. And now the reapers are here. And the reapers are saying, we're ready to pull them up and bundle them for the fire. Because it's time that you identify with the thoughts that your father planted in your mind from the beginning. Well, this boy began to remember his home. And you see, once that light starts to flicker again, it means that some thought, some tear has been peeled back and allowed you to see just even the little flicker of that light of God that's still in you that you can't get rid of because you didn't put it there. It's there because he put it there. And the more you look, the more you see, and the bigger the flame gets until it consumes from the east to the west, representing all sides of your mind. So this boy is in the pig pen, remembering his father. Now notice, he didn't have to come out of the pig pen to remember his father. He didn't have to do anything to remember his father. He remembered his father while he was doing what he was doing. So he says to himself, while he's in that condition, even the servants got enough food. And I'm sitting here starving. I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to cook up a story. And I'm going to go back to my father's house. And I'm going to get my way in by conning my daddy into making me something that he didn't make. Make me the designation that I have decided I am based on my behavior. So he says, I'm going to go to my father and I'm going to say, Father, I have sinned. Make me a servant because my sins has turned me from a son to a servant. So as he's walking home, he's concocting this story. Now I can identify with that. See, because many times when I flunked a grade, and I have to tell you, I flunked school from K through 8, and it was not until the 8th grade that somebody got a conscience and decided to flunk me then. And I said, you know, you're not keeping me from high school. The next year I went over and registered into the 9th grade at high school. That's another story. But I can identify with it because many times when I flunked, I would be coming home, and in those days, they would give you the report card. You would carry the report card home to give to your parents. I would concoct a story. I'm going to tell my father this. And I'm going to tell him he ought to do this, that, the other to me because I've been a bad boy. I'm concocting who I am, and I know who I am. My father's going to disapprove of it. And so let me get a punishment to suggest to him that I can actually endure, and hopefully he'll give me just that punishment. This is what this boy was doing. He was concocting a story on his way home as he walked home. I'm going to tell my father I'm a sinner, and you need to punish me by making me a servant, but let me in the house. He gets to taking his steps towards home, and the father sees, notice what the verse says. The verse says that the father sees his son from afar off. Now remember, this boy had wasted everything. So he wasn't coming with a jerry curl. He wasn't coming all shaved up and everything with a high top fade or whatever. This boy had cuckoo-bugs in his afro. He was smelly. He probably had HIV or syphilis or some disease or whatever the case is. He certainly wasn't coming looking good. He didn't have a pair of Stacey Adams on if he had shoes on at all. And on top of that, he's crazy because he's thinking he's going to tell his father that he's a sinner as a result of his behavior. Now, his father sees his son from afar off, and he ran. Notice he runs. The father recognizes his son. He ran out to his son, and he starts to tell his story. Father, I have sinned, and no more worthy to be called thy son. That verse 22 says, but the father says to the servants. So it tells you that the father was not paying attention to anything this boy was saying. He was looking at the servants, and he was talking to the servants. It says, but the father said to the servants, kill the fatted calf because my son. He's not paying attention to what this crazy man got to say. Get the robe, get the ring, and put the ring on his finger because my son was dead. Dead to what? Dead to the knowledge of himself. And as a result of him coming back to the knowledge of himself, I want to celebrate him. He was lost to himself. I want to point out another little piece as this boy was coming home. When, if you remember, while he was walking away from home, the light was behind him and he saw himself in terms of shadows. But when he turned to come home, the light is in front of him and the shadow is now behind him, and he sees himself more and more the closer he gets in terms of the light of his Father. And if he was to turn around and begin to look back, which is what he was doing as he was coming home, he kept looking back and kept remembering what he had done back there. And each time he looked back, he saw the shadow. But when he looked forward, he saw the light of his Father. And that's the thing that kept him going home. Do you understand this, ladies and gentlemen? Because I'm really tired of preaching. And so it's my hope that you get this. Listen. He saw the light of his Father as he came home, but he still was crazy. He still had the definition of himself in his mind, and that definition that was in his mind was contradicting the light of his Father. There was only one thing that he knew, that the servants have enough food to eat. And that what was driving him, that hunger for his Father's house, was the only thing that was driving him. It certainly wasn't the knowledge of himself, because he had forgotten about the knowledge of himself. He'd forgotten who he was. He gets home, they throw a party, and the older boy decides to come. He's coming home from the field, and he hears all the ruckus, and he asks one of the servants, well, what's going on? He says, your brother has come home. Your brother, the sinner, your brother, the publican, your brother, the whoremonger, your brother, the weed smoker, crackhead, your brother has come home. Now that went over some of y'all's head. Because he never stopped being a son, nor did he ever stop being a brother. You can take your religion that designates some others as a sinner and recognize that is your brother. I'm going to close some churches down, okay? Because a lot of us walk around thinking that we are on a higher level and our brother is not our brother. He is a sinner. Anyway, the brother, the older one, he decides, I'm not even going in. I ain't going to get in with this party. And so the father, the certain man, comes out to his son. He didn't say, well, if he's not going to come in, I'm not going out. He came out and entreated him. The word entreated means reason with him. The word entreated means to appeal to him, to his higher senses. He came out and entreated him. And he said, it is good that we throw a party, because the older boy was pissed off because he did everything that his father told him to do. He didn't make any mistakes. He never left home. He never disobeyed his father. He did everything that his father told him to do. And so that sounds like a reasonable argument. Hold up, Dad. I've been doing everything you said to do. But as soon, you notice the word, as soon as your son who been out whoremongering and doing all the riotous living comes home, as soon, he didn't make him repent and get baptized. He didn't make him do any amens. He didn't make him do any sacras. He didn't make him do anything. Didn't even make him wash up, clean up, comb his hair, brush his teeth, do nothing. He just said, get the robe and put it on. Get the ring and put it on. It's you who put designations on your brother whom God has accepted as he is, because God is a certain man. He is certain about himself and therefore certain about you and certain about your brother, in spite of what your brother might be doing in his physical body. Listen, the father appealed to his son. He said, this is a good thing that we throw this party. Now, I'm going to wrap it up right here with this. You will notice that both boys thought what they did, listen, Reverend, both boys thought what they did is the thing that either made them a son or took them out of the sonship. Let that marinate. Both boys thought that their behavior is the thing that made them who they are. But I want you to remember when you go to service this morning, this certain man is certain about the identity of his son. The younger son thought that he had the power to make himself something other than the creation of his father by a decision that he made. And he decided to make himself into a sinner, and he believed in that creation as a sinner. He believed everything. He practiced sin. He took on the thought system of sin to make himself a sinner, which is opposite than what his father made. The older boy thought that his obedience to his father is the thing that made him the son. He thought that because he obeyed his father and that he did everything his father said, that is the thing that made him the son. That's the thing that made him saved. I'm baptized, I'm filled with the Holy Ghost. I got Jesus on my side and I'm running for my life because I ain't had sex in 100 years. I ain't smoked no weed, I ain't drank no brew. He thought that his obedience is the thing that gave him his nature. Y'all better hear this point. You think because you drinking heavily, that takes you out of the family of God. And you think because you ain't got laid in 100 years, that puts you in the family of God. Y'all better hear this. This is a hard saying. Who can hear it? Who can hear this saying? This is a hard saying because the axe is laid at the root of the tree. What is that tree? This axe is laid at. It's the doctrine that makes you believe that your behavior is what makes you the son of God, or your disobedience is what makes you a sinner. The axe is laid at the root of the tree, the foundation of that doctrine. But going back to this certain man, he was certain about himself. You are not a sinner because I'm not a sinner. You are not something other than my son because I made you. And you are not made by yourself. And your behavior does not have the power to overthrow my creation. Your imagination only has the power to fool you, but not me, because I'm a certain man. I'm certain about myself, and therefore I'm certain about you. The Father knows the self. And so this is how you can come to the throne with confidence. This is the gospel, the good news that you never was a sinner and you never can be one. You can study it and try to make yourself a dog. You can study a dog. You can bark. You can lick your own genitals. You can drink out of the toilet. You can smell other dogs' butts. But you can never take on the nature of a dog because you was never created to be a dog. And it doesn't matter how much you study a dog, you can't change your nature to one if you can show me. And likewise, you cannot make yourself a sinner, no matter what you do. So that brings about a problem. Then how do we control people doing evil? There's no law. There's nothing to control. We got to have something to control people. That's the problem. How about starting off controlling you? You cannot change your thinking by changing your behavior. Listen, but you can change your behavior by changing your thinking. Now, I'm going to give you all a little bit about me on that note, and then I'm done. When I went to college, I started drinking alcohol, beer in particular. And it became a difficult thing to drop, to let go. I drank because I associated alcohol with fun. That's how I learned to drink. And in order to have fun, you got to be drunk. And I tell my sons this, it's easy to start, hard to stop, and you won't know that you can't stop until you try. Then you will recognize you have developed a habit. Well, I tried and tried to quit, and no matter how I tried, I couldn't seem to snap that habit. One morning at 4 o'clock in the morning, I got up and I went to the bathroom and my eyes caught the mirror. Instead of going to the toilet, I went straight to the mirror and looked myself in the eye and said, enough. That was December 8th, 2012. I haven't had a drink since. I had a party a few weeks ago, and I had alcohol here. I have not touched it, not because it's sinful or something I can't do. I'm a free man. If I want to do it, I will do it. I just decided I didn't want to do it. But here's the point I'm making about this. Every time I tried to stop first and get my thinking in line with my behavior, I couldn't stop. But when I ignored my behavior due to a revelation, I'm going to say, that came to me. This revelation was this. Internally, this reasoning came to my mind. The next time you drink a beer, I want you to enjoy it. I want you to get the coldest one you can find. And when you go to the store, I want you to pay attention to how when you open it, that sound and the little bubbles come up out of the can. Feel the coldness of this. Listen! Here's freedom, ladies and gentlemen, from any habit. I want you to enjoy it. When you drink it, enjoy, feel the cool wetness on your lips and feel it on your tongue and the taste of it that you hate, actually, but you know what it's going to do. Feel it when it goes down into your belly and you start to feel as the inebriation starts to set in and you get drunk. Enjoy it. I had tried everything else. Decided to try that. I did that 2 times. 2 times. I enjoyed it. And once I accepted what I was doing was by choice, the energy that held that alcohol was removed from my hand and my body, and I have yet to pick it up again. And not only that, I am free enough to know that if I want to go get it, I can go get it and drink it if I want. Here's my point. When that spirit of power comes to you, it doesn't have to use threats of hell. It doesn't have to use threats of being outcast. It doesn't have to use anything because it knows who you are. He knows who you are. He don't have to threaten you with a hellfire because he's a certain man. And this you must understand. Join me Wednesday, ladies and gentlemen, for the special Wednesday. We haven't had let's start this Sunday. But those are same. So, join me Wednesday. That's what teach
Give me stone silence, said the deaf man. I didn't believe Sunday school.